Welcome to the Payments Unpacked podcast. My name is Mike Chambers, and today I'm really pleased to introduce Lee McNabb to you today. Lee is the Strategic Payments Insight at NatWest. Now, Lee, for those you've not met before, I wonder if you could introduce yourself. And I guess there's probably no need to introduce NatWest, but you might want to let us know what corner of NatWest you inhabit.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for asking me onto this podcast, Mike. I think it may have been a referral from Teresa, who was on previously, who's an ex-colleague and a good friend. So anyway, Lee McNabb, I look after, as you said, Mike, the strategic insight and research element for NatWest Group. So I look across the entirety of the group. The group comprises, obviously, of our retail bank, our commercial and institutional element. I think we're the largest corporate banker. Our wealth division, our markets division, and effectively tying the different strands of strategy together from a payments perspective. Payments-wise at NatWest, we are a kind of scale provider in the UK. I think we touch something like 1 in 4 payments. It's £60 trillion worth of value annually that flows through our infrastructure. We do payments for the government. We do payments for most of the large tier 1 merchants in the UK. I think we have about 9 million active retail consumers that make payments with us every single day, so it's a kind of scale piece. I've been at the bank about 4.5-5 years maybe. I was previously at Cooperative Bank and then moved over here to look after strategy, done a bit of innovation, and now spend a lot of my time ultimately thinking about what's going to be next from a payments perspective. So from the reg landscape, industry challenges, right the way through to stuff like digital currencies and the like.
Thank you for that introduction. You've definitely stated your credentials for today's podcast, and I'm going to jump straight in with a question which really at the centre of that strategy for payments over the next few years. And this question focuses around open banking. My question to you is, can you just give us your view on the current state of account-to-account payments, and what expectations should we place on the future expansion of this new type of payment mechanism?
So it's a great question. It's a hot topic both for industry and internally at NatWest at this moment. I think we need to recognise firstly that account to account comes in many shapes and sizes, right? From bulk to batch to single to recurring. We see account to account as a really important part of the kind of broader payments landscape, and one that's growing in prominence, not just from a consumer perspective, but from a corporate perspective as well. There are changes across all those different layers, innovation within each, but the instant payment space is probably more of interest from an innovation perspective. It's a global trend, the move to real time, and as payments have begun to be seen, I think, more as a kind of tool for customer privacy and advocacy. I mean, I've been in payments not as long as your good self or many people that will be listening. But even when I started in payments from a product background, it was very much seen as the kind of plumbing and the servicing. When I was at Co-op, we didn't really have a payments kind of strategy focus. It was very much around, well, what's the reg change and what's coming next. And that's changed at an industry level now. It's now seen kind of gets more sexy and less of the plumbing and the boring side of it. And the growth, especially of account to account, is clear, right? You called it out, I think, in your Payments Unpacked newsletter, which is a great read for anyone that isn't subscribed. I think total
thanks, Lee.
Volumes increased 15% year on year, values up 25%, and multiple reasons for that, right? The digital movement, I guess the ease of making payments electronically now through mobile apps or online, and we'll touch more on this later, I think, but open banking, as you said in the intro there, is also a huge part of that. There's a regulatory aspiration to drive more from an account-to-account perspective. With the likes of variable recurring payments coming to the market, even more chance to grow. So it's a fundamental part of the next 5 to 10 plus years of the payments landscape we all know and love.
Absolutely, and this whole open banking thing sort of is underlined by the need for resilient and scalable underlying payment rails. And I could ask this next question in respect of the wider market, but I'm not. I'm going to ask this from respect of NatWest. And the question about these payment rails is, we've heard a lot about new payments architecture. We've heard a lot about how it's supposed to transform the underlying payment system, move us along to a consolidated payment platform, give us the future of faster payments. So from a NatWest perspective, why is the new payment architecture an important factor for the future of payments for NatWest?
I mean, I spoke in the intro about the scale that we manage and process from a payments perspective. And I think we look upon the NPA as kind of representing a generational opportunity to deliver, I think, what is a digital first kind of customer centric infrastructure. NatWest, as that scale provider, as an open banking TPP, so third party provider, so we have a competitive pitch to market. Open banking, a big element of that. And one of the nuances within NPA with kind of propositions there, it's not just a like for faster payments. I think people often confuse it that they're just replacing faster payments, but the plan and the aspiration is actually to go above and beyond that. And instant payments is a huge part of that. So the payment system regulator, the PSR, they really want to add competition to the market, to the card schemes, let's be frank, to the card rails that are dominant, but in a good way. And that for us, as a market leader, as scale on retail and the corporate side, it is massively important. It's not just seen as another compliance delivery. It's seen as, how can we make it different? And we've got to encourage competition and innovation, right? And like most providers, seek opportunity within that. And I know you wanted NatWest focus, but let's be frank, NatWest is a incumbent, one of the big 4 or 5 in the UK infrastructure, which was once market leading. But faster payments is 12, 13 years old now. I would argue that the globe looks upon the UK and now thinks it maybe isn't market leading in the payment space anymore. So I think the NPA is needed for the UK and for banks like NatWest. And then when you add in the ISO element for new payments architecture, for that enhanced level of data, the resiliency piece that you mentioned, it just makes sense. But it's not going to be an easy delivery. It's already been quite a challenging journey already.
Yeah, no, absolutely, it has. And there's a lot of looking forward, isn't there, to that new platform. Let me just drill down just a little bit in terms of innovation. If we think about faster payments not being a replacement for our new payment architecture, what innovative features could we expect in faster payments 2.0?
Yeah, so and this is where I think that, as I said, stuff is often missed. So at its core, NPA is there to upgrade and replace faster payments, right? But it has multiple propositions looking to serve different needs. 2 examples would be priority payments, which is that more like-for-like replacement of faster payments. And as I've said, instant payments, which brings that real opportunity for innovative growth. So a true instant confirmation of payment. The industry, through Pay UK, is investigating how to grow the use of interbank payments in retail, a consumer to business transaction. As I said earlier, the PSR is encouraging that competitive lens, asking the Pay.UK to find ways to expand competition into retail payments. They see this as a hugely important area for market innovation that will create competition in the consumer to business space and deliver a kind of UK-owned retail payments proposition that will improve end-user value. There have already been exploratory meetings with the payment leads from a range of retailers, merchants, PISPs, so payment initiation service providers in the open banking space, wallet providers, tech, non-bank acquirers, looking at opportunities. And innovation could be multiple layers, anything from consumer protection, which we know is a big challenge in this industry at the moment in time, to elements of request to pay, to different ways of applying reward and loyalty using the richer data that ISO 20022 will bring. So plenty of layers, I would say. I've used layers a few times already, but layers of innovation that can happen. But it's not going to be something that happens quickly, and we do need to focus on the mandated piece, right? But we should, as we go through that mandated piece, look at the opportunity to make our customer experience better, whether that's a consumer or a corporate.
That's cool. Look, we're recording. We've talked about open banking. We've talked about new payment architecture. We're recording this on Valentine's Day. And I guess I've got a question for you. You know, as we talk about open banking, account to account, as we talk about NPA, are they two separate things, or are they absolutely a perfect match and dependent upon each other?
It's a good question. I guess we kind of covered this in two things in the conversation thus far. Sorry. For me, they're kind of hand in hand. Account to account and associated benefits will be enabled in many ways by the direction of NPA. But it's important to note that the account to account opportunity that exists now, we don't need to wait for NPA. Open banking is here now. It's growing fantastically. If you look at the different use cases that are slowly starting to gain adoption, I think the tax payments, with something like over £10 billion, have been paid in tax through open banking. But that's only an annual usage. Do you know what I mean? You do that once. It's not really in the, I would say, the daily spend space. And that's where open banking probably needs to increase from an adoption perspective. It needs additional use cases. It needs bigger merchants to get on board. And we know from being a PIS that there's real interest in adopting open banking as a credible alternative to cards. The variable recurring payments, the VRP space is a great element, or a kind of a day two or an open banking plus that I think will really be a catalyst for adoption. If we think of card on file, recurring card transactions, card in wallet, direct debits, I'm not saying it's going to replace them, but it's a real credible alternative where you've got an enduring and everlasting approval to take money directly from an account. But there is some way to go, right? And it's really important that the industry moves together. The sequencing and phasing of the program to deliver in a sensible and manageable fashion, shall we say? And again, alongside ISO and the RTGS piece. So I don't treat them as separate things, and I think we need to all kind of bundle everything together, and again, I'd add in the consumer protection piece to that as well.
No, cool, good. And picking up just perhaps on that consumer protection piece, it's really, really important in terms of the future of faster payments and instant payments. But, you know, why do you need consumer protection? Because sometimes things go wrong. And we hear an awful lot around the eye-watering levels of APP fraud. You know, as a banker, how can organisations like NatWest, and how they should protect customers against APP fraud? What's the role of the banker? What's the role of the payment provider?
So it's a massively important one, and this is a podcast within itself, Mike. Let's not beat around the bush. It's no denying it's a big issue, and I would actually argue it's not just an issue for financial services. We play a massive role, right? But it's the telcos, it's social media, it's the entire industry that faces off to our customers, have a role to play in ultimately protecting what is our customer base. And we can all easily be victims, right, with the level of sophistication the fraudsters are coming to the table here. But I think there's probably multiple things. So what we do, I mean, the industry is working hard together to combat the bad actors, from enhanced data sharing, customer education, initiatives like confirmation of pay, which I know you've covered in your newsletter quite frequently, to go into more detail on them on the enhanced data sharing, like the kind of COP name check. This will see the sending firm send an API message to the receiving firm to get back attributes of the person, business which has the account. It then allows the sending firm to check if you're paying, e.g. Mary Jones, and it comes back as Mike Smith, brother answer that don't tie in with what you know about Mary. It's likely there's an impersonation. On scam reimbursement, firms' performances will be monitored, and if not adhering, then enforcement could happen once the appropriate powers are in place, and I think they go live end of 2023. So there's still some journey to go, right? And I think for the Treasury Select Committee, it probably isn't soon enough, but we have to follow the due process. But we need, I think it is again, back to the collaboration piece, it's a broad industry approach that's needing to combating what is an endemic or a pandemic or whatever the phrase is. And the challenge we have is we add more innovative solutions in, we've touched on what NPA will bring. That's going to give new opportunities and routes for the bad actors in the space. So we need to almost be ahead of that as much as we can. And when we're talking about innovation, that big part of that innovation should be about protection as well. How can we use the tools and the technology we have to better protect consumers and customers?
Thanks. And, as you say, there's an awful lot banks and payment providers can do. There's always the challenge that everything takes too long at a time when the fraudster is enjoying the fruits of their labours. But I think it's really important that banks get this right. And I press the follow-on question is that, we can always expect banks and payment firms to do stuff, but how can people protect themselves when they're making a payment?
Do you know what? This is it's a great question. And we talk about internally that ultimately we all work in the fraud department, and we all have a responsibility within the bank to educate not only the customers that some of us will deal with day to day and face to face, but also our friends and family around us. I don't know, you probably get the same. You'll get a question about, I've had this text or I've got this text. What does that mean? And we all have almost a responsibility, I would say, to use the knowledge that we have working in the industry just to give advice and guidance to those that are around us, our immediate friends, our immediate family. And it's simple things around the educational aspect. If something looks unusual, it probably is. Question it. If you get direct contact from a bank, you're not expecting it, question it, bring them back. If there's contact numbers for banks, you can go into a branch, you can go online and message most institutions. Now, if there's any doubt, then just take a step back and go, actually, is this right? I've had this random text, I've had this random email, I've got this phone call, people telling me to bank, hang up, ring back the bank. Most of the time you'll realise that actually it isn't actually the bank that's called you or contacted you, it's just a very sophisticated scam. Look for nuances within the email that you've got. It might say NatWest, but it might be spelt with a 3 instead of the E, and little things like that you might not notice initially, but just always question the engagement that you're getting. Ultimately, live life as a cynic, I guess, and you might question those things that come through, but it will probably help you in the longer run.
Yeah, I guess it's like it's like the adage, if a deal looks too good to be true, it probably is. You can apply the same thing here in terms of fraudulent activity. If the bank's asking you to do something a little bit strange, it probably isn't the bank. So, challenge. Take 5 have some great stuff on their website. Do search Take 5 in Google. And if you go to northeypoint.com, you'll read a blog by a lady called Rowena who nearly got scammed. Now, that's a story that a lot of us go through, but actually, if you read Rowanna's story, she is a data fraud, data protection type person, professional, and she nearly got caught out as well. So it shows how sophisticated the fraudsters are. So look at that blog on payments.com, northeypoint.com. So thank you, Lee, for sharing that with us today. It's pretty obvious how we get in touch with NatWest, but how can listeners connect with you?
So I'm relatively vocal on LinkedIn, as you know. I speak a lot at different conferences or invited to different conferences and events. But contact me on LinkedIn, just Lee McNabb. You'll find me. I look like I'm dressed like a nurse. I've got a green T-shirt on from a hackathon we did a few years ago. So you'll know who I am, and then reach out. I'm happy to engage and have a conversation with anyone. Not just about potential opportunities to collaborate, but it's also about thoughts and opinions. I learn the most through observing and absorbing from others. So yeah, please get in touch.
Cool. Thank you, Lee. I'm really pleased you brought up the nurse thing, because we met at Open Banking Expo in the autumn of last year. We had a chat. I checked you out on LinkedIn and I thought, why is he dressed as a nurse? I couldn't get it. So you've now explained why you look like a nurse on your LinkedIn profile. So, Lee, thank you so much for being on today's podcast. For those listening, if you've yet to subscribe, please find us on Spotify, Apple or other podcast platforms and subscribe. While you're at it, please subscribe to the Payments Unpacked newsletter. You'll find us at payments-unpacked.com. I'm Mike Chambers. This is the Payments Unpacked podcast, and thank you for listening.